When I was around 12 years old, I had the only bedroom in our house that wasn't on the second floor. In our high ranch home, upon entering, the house split into 2 floors, one leading upstairs and the other leading downstairs. The lower floor housed the living room, garage, my bedroom, and a bathroom. As I was the oldest and the only boy among my 2 sisters, my parents granted me the downstairs room. It was the largest and technically the coolest in terms of temperature. At the age of 10, my parents replaced my twin bed with a full bed, a small upgrade considering the spaciousness of the room. When I turned 12, my younger sisters were 5 and 8 years old. At this age, I was allowed to stay home alone, but not with my 5-year-old sister, and my 8-year-old sister was only left alone with me when my parents were not going to be away for an extended period. On occasions when they were away for just a short duration, about 3 consecutive nights or a bit more, I would find myself waking up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, struggling to fall back asleep. At the age of 12, I understood that I shouldn't have any issues with sleep. I kept a fan running next to my bed, especially during the hot summer nights. Despite the constant white noise from the fan, I found myself waking up on several occasions without any apparent reason. One particular night, after getting up to fill a glass of water, I headed to the bathroom located next to my bedroom. As I was filling the glass, I thought I heard something emanating from inside my room. Turning off the tap and listening intently, all I could discern was the fan's steady hum. Approaching my bedroom door, an eerie feeling gripped me, though I couldn't identify the source. Choosing not to stay in my room, I opted for the living room couch that night. Eventually, I drifted back to sleep. However, I woke up again that night, this time to a noise emanating from the kitchen. I could see the glow from the refrigerator and hear someone rummaging through it. Due to the house layout, the kitchen wasn't visible from the living room couch, preventing me from identifying who was in there. I heard the refrigerator door close, followed by footsteps, and feeling drowsy, I drifted back to sleep. The next day, my mom, while folding clothes in my room, commented on an unpleasant smell, urging me to clean up whatever caused it. Dismissing her concerns, I ignored the smell, thinking nothing of it. However, I would soon regret not paying attention. Later that evening, our dad turned on the air conditioner due to the sweltering heat. After a family movie night, everyone began preparing for bed. I returned to my room to play some video games before settling in for the night. After turning off the TV and console, I lay on my side, ready to sleep, without turning on the fan, as the air conditioner was already running, producing a gentle hum of air from the ceiling vents. I eventually dozed off but woke up again shortly after. An unfamiliar sound filled the room. Initially, all I heard was the gentle whir of the fan. However, as it ceased, the room plunged into silence, and I could distinctly hear someone breathing. It wasn't my own. Glancing around the room, the closed closet door ruled out any potential source from there. My childlike innocence led me to assume it was my mischievous little sister causing a ruckus. Curiosity overcoming my fear, I cautiously lay down on the floor and peered beneath the bed, lifting a small piece of cloth hanging from its edge. To my shock, I discovered a large person lying amidst a pile of blankets under my bed. His eyes were closed, and his head turned towards me. Recoiling in terror, I fled the room, screaming for my dad. The sound of my screams prompted my parents to rush out of their room, visibly concerned. Pointing frantically to my room, I managed to convey that someone was under my bed. Acting swiftly, my dad confronted and forcibly removed the large, disheveled man. My mom dialed 911, ensuring help was on the way. The incident left a lasting impact on me, causing severe mental distress. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in my own room, let alone the house, and sought refuge in the safety of my parents' bedroom for a while. To alleviate our fears, my father installed surveillance cameras around the house. We discarded all opened items from the fridge, uncertain of what the intruder might have tampered with. The fear that someone could be lurking under my bed haunted me for years. We can't determine how long he had been hiding under my bed, perhaps for several days. The unsettling aroma, the intrusion into the fridge, and the recurrent instances of waking up in the middle of the night created an atmosphere of uncertainty. Regardless of his intentions, the mere thought of someone concealed beneath your bed encapsulates every child's worst nightmare. This tale comes from my great-grandfather, who has now reached the remarkable age of 101. He has shared this story at family gatherings over the years. Originally hailing from Yaroslavl, Russia, he was born during the time of the Soviet Union. Having served under the Soviet Union during World War II, he later emigrated to the United States to escape communism. Recounting this story once more, he described events that transpired not long after the Battle of Velikiye Luki, a battle that, while not a major one, still resulted in significant Soviet and German casualties, much like many battles of that time. It was a frigid evening, with my great-grandfather emphasizing the bone-chilling cold. Sheltered in a small, undamaged house, one of the few spared by the ravages of war, he and his comrades reveled in celebration, sharing drinks, singing songs, and exchanging laughter and jokes. Picture a typical celebration scene at some point in the evening. Two fellow soldiers entered the building, but my great-grandfather and his friend Sergei weren't too fond of them. Apparently these two were loudmouths and generally unpleasant. Sergei suggested going outside for a smoke, and my great-grandfather agreed. Donning their heavy coats, they stepped out into the freezing cold air. After lighting their cigarettes, they engaged in conversation, savoring the triumph of winning a battle that had raged on for about 2 months. As they were about to return inside after finishing their cigarettes, a distant scream pierced the air, echoing from the woods. Fearing it might be a comrade under attack by an enraged German patrol, they hurried back inside, grabbing their guns. Anticipating armed Germans, they rallied more fellow soldiers to venture into the woods with them. My great-grandfather noted that as they delved deeper into the woods, an unsettling feeling of dread and fear crept over him, especially when the screams faded away. My great-grandpa proposed that they split into pairs and search for the source of the screams. Sergei partnered with him, while the others formed their own duos. After about 2 minutes of navigating the dark, cold woods, my great-grandpa mentioned hearing faint cries, like someone in pain. Sergei confirmed hearing it too, leading them to follow the sounds. As they progressed, they noticed drops of blood in the snow, heightening their sense of urgency and danger. The next part of the story sends shivers down my spine every time my great-grandpa recounts it. Upon reaching the origin of the cries, they stumbled upon a bizarre and disturbing scene. 2 German soldiers were on the ground, one dead, the other alive. Their uniforms were torn and bloodied, with the survivor cowering by a tree, muttering in German. Unaware of my great-grandpa and Sergei's presence initially, the survivor continued his distressed muttering. My great-grandpa approached the deceased soldier, discovering a gruesome sight. The corpse had been horrifically mutilated, missing limbs, with skin ripped off the face. The uniform was shredded, giving the appearance of being scalped. What struck my great-grandpa even more was the peculiar smell, indescribable, unlike the odor of a dead body, but more akin to chemicals. The corpse appeared freshly killed. As Sergei approached the living German soldier, the survivor, upon noticing Sergei, recoiled in terror, displaying signs of severe trauma. He screamed in German, and my great-grandpa observed that the soldier's leg was torn apart, with his chest covered in blood. The German was uttering something like "Daskalos," or a similar term. Sergei swiftly drew his pistol and, with a single shot to the head, ended the German soldier's suffering. Almost immediately after this, my great-grandpa recounted hearing moaning-like noises, signaling the arrival of a towering figure running away in the darkness. Filled with fear, Sergei and my great-grandpa began shooting indiscriminately in the direction of the mysterious entity. Other soldiers rushed over, but the creature had vanished. All the men faced reprimands upon returning to the village, and a report was sent to high command. However, no further investigation took place. According to my great-grandpa, it remains the most terrifying experience of his life, evoking stress whenever he recalls the sight of the mutilated German soldier and the enigmatic entity. This incident occurred shortly after my fiancée, Morgan, and I moved into our house in a serene little town. We currently reside in this dwelling, a charming and modest home that suits us well, leaving room for the possibility of raising a family in the future. Upon our arrival, we quickly acquainted ourselves with one set of neighbors, a friendly older couple in their late 60s. The neighbors on the other side were more distant, and it took some time before we crossed paths with them. During the initial weeks of settling in, we found ourselves immersed in the exhausting routine of juggling our jobs and organizing our new home. Around the second week, as Morgan cooked pasta in the kitchen, I sat at the table browsing area rugs on my laptop. Feeling a bit stuffy, I decided to open the back door. However, as I approached, I noticed a figure seated in one of the chairs in the backyard. The person was hunched over with their head down. To say that I was startled would be an understatement. The sight nearly scared the living daylights out of me. I whispered Morgan's name, cautioning her not to scream, but to look outside. She gasped, pulled me close, and suggested that I say something. Uncertain of what to do, I hesitated. I'm not the most imposing figure, and even though the person had their back to us and was seated, they seemed larger than me. Morgan suggested that I should knock on the glass and tell him to leave. I hesitated, feeling a sense of fear. Our backyard was quite spacious, but just outside the back door there was a patio with some leftover furniture. The yard lights were off, and we could see him only through the interior lights shining through the glass door, indicating that he was aware of our presence. Gathering my courage, I decided to knock on the glass and assertively tell him to leave our property. The man turned around and looked at me, getting up with a half-smile that almost seemed like a laugh. Despite his age, around 50, he had a lengthy gray beard and tattoos covering his wrists. As he approached the glass door, I made sure it was locked. Standing on the other side, he shifted his gaze to Morgan and began making inappropriate comments while licking his lips. Frustrated, I yelled, "All right, I'm calling the police." To shield ourselves from his lewd behavior, I closed the sliding blind. While on the phone with 911, I could still hear the man outside speaking loudly, almost yelling, continuing with his offensive remarks about Morgan. I positioned the phone against the glass so the operator could hear the man's behavior. The operator instructed me to stay on the line until the police arrived. Eventually, it became quiet outside, prompting me to check through the glass, only to find that the man had disappeared. Despite this, I eagerly awaited the arrival of the police. When they came, they conducted a search of the backyard, filed a police report, and left. We believed the ordeal was over. However, later that night, while watching TV in the living room, we heard something in the yard. Approaching the window, I slightly adjusted the blind to witness the man's presence once again. He held a cigarette, muttering to himself, or attempting to communicate with us while facing the house. When he noticed the adjustment in the blinds, he rushed to the window. Startled, I stepped back, and he began pounding on the window, uttering vile threats about Morgan. I instructed her to go upstairs to spare her from further distress. Yelling that I would call the police again, the pounding ceased, and he fell silent. After waiting for a few seconds, I cautiously adjusted the blind, only to find that he had vanished. I went upstairs to comfort Morgan, who was visibly shaken, assuring her that he was gone, though in retrospect, I should have called the police again. I heard thumping and knocking downstairs, prompting me to descend partway down the stairs. The back door was being subjected to bumps, and the doorknob twisting and turning. He was attempting to gain entry. I rushed to the kitchen, grabbed the phone, and dialed 911 again, urgently pleading with the operator to dispatch the police. This time, the police arrived swiftly, and I refrained from alerting the man outside to their arrival. Unfortunately, by the time they reached our location, the man had vanished once more, likely retreating into the deep foliage of the backyard. He did not return that night. The following day, we embarked on a quest to meet neighbors, introducing ourselves to those we hadn't encountered yet, and inquiring about anyone resembling the description of the man. The unsettling revelation emerged. A couple residing a few doors down knew the man. He was notorious for domestic violence against his ex-wife, struggled with substance abuse, and was generally perceived as highly dangerous. He lived around the block from us in a dilapidated house. The most alarming aspect was that we reported him to the police, but lacking video evidence, we were unable to press charges. His current whereabouts remain unknown, as we have not heard from or seen him in a considerable amount of time. We fervently hope it stays that way.